Thank you.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Hi, Robin.
Hey there.
Got everybody. All right, let's, Scott's not going to be here tonight, so we've got calling the meeting at 7:01, Shutesbury Conservation Commission. Tonight we have Miriam DeFont, Mary David, Robin Harrington, and Beth Wilson. Hello, everybody. I'm hoping this will be a shorter meeting tonight because we really just have some topics to discuss. We don't have any hearings tonight. Penny wanted to know when to come and talk about the mowing plan for Lotto 32. And since I don't know how long this meeting is going to be, I'm fine with moving that to the top of the agenda. I don't think Penny's here. Are you representing her, Marianne?
Yep, she's coming. So so she should be here any minute.
Okay.
So and we worked on that together. So maybe you have minutes or something you want to approve? Well,
Yeah, do we have any, are there any public comments?
On the mowing plan?
Or no, just in general, if there's anybody here to make, we could.
Oh, public comment.
People raise their hand if they want to make a comment. Okay. All right, I see Penny is signing in.
She's there now.
Hi, Penny.
Hi, Miriam. Long time no see.
So I'm happy to put your topic to the top of the agenda because I don't know how long we're going to spend on other things. So you don't have to wait.
That would be fabulous. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Go ahead. Why don't you tell us what you're proposing?
Well, I think the lawn mowing document is fairly self-explanatory. My prompt for doing this is that as I walk through that field, I'm seeing bittersweet and small trees starting to grow. And I haven't done a thorough analysis, but I imagine there are other things in there that we don't really want to grow to the point where they're producing flowers and seeds. So I think if we want to keep it a meadow, we need to mow. And as you know, there was an enforcement order last fall asking the highway department not to mow anymore, and they stopped. And it's actually kind of a lovely meadow at this point. But I do think there are some portions of it that it would be fine to mow at this point, and it would make it a more accessible spot. So what I proposed was going out there with one or more members of the Conservation Commission, measuring 25 feet off the wetland flags in the field portion of the field, staking that so it's clear, and advising the highway department to mow. You know, I actually talked to Steve Sullivan today. They have quite a bit of flexibility in height, so we could work that out. He said they often in the winter mow 5 to 7 inches high, but you know, I mow for bittersweet in our field regularly, and I mow probably 4 inches. So that's what I put in the document that I sent to you. And then the area greater than 25 feet from the 2 wetland areas could be mowed as it has traditionally been. I know if you've been out where the turnaround is out there, that little area in between the driveway has 10-foot tall bittersweet growing up all over the place. And it's, you know, quite a distance from the places that we're most concerned about. So that's my proposal. And then in the winter, and I'm proposing that this be done in November because, you know, I manage a field at our property. We mow in November. We try to do it before the snow falls because once the grass gets matted down, it's really difficult to mow. And so I know you have discussed mowing when the ground is frozen. What I proposed was mowing after there's been a week with no rain, the ground is firm, and hopefully before the snow falls, and mowing at we can decide what the height should be, 5-7 inches. So that's basically the proposal. And the wetland area of the field would only be mowed that one time a year. And then, of course, we would exclude mowing in the area that we just restored. We've planted trees in there, and we would keep some agreed upon distance from that, 25 feet, whatever you feel. Yeah, I mean, certainly I open this up for discussion with you, but we would love to do this with a memo of understanding signed between Marianne, who's largely managed the site for the past year, and the highway department, and I know I put someone else on there. I forget. I don't have
So,
the.
Tom, I think.
Here,
What?
So let me ask, when is the NOI, when are you expecting to submit the NOI for the library?
Fall, late fall, mid fall, hard to know. So this would really be a stopgap. I'm assuming this would be a 1-year plan just to get the field mowed for this growing season.
Yeah, I mean, I ideally, what I would like to do is see this rolled into the NOI.
And I think I mentioned we are proposing, we'll propose a field management plan in the NOI. And I think, you know, you had asked for remediation for working in the buffer zone. In my mind, a great remediation would be to enhance that meadow, add in native plants, pollinator plants, and to work on the invasives that are creeping in from all directions. And Robin, I bet you'd like to help on that.
Oh, gosh, since I had a grad student at UMass whose thesis was on bittersweet,
Yeah,
we know that it can grow 20-25 feet in a single season.
yeah.
So-
So frankly, what prompted me to do this was, Miriam, when we went out for the inspection, I had seen one wand of a bittersweet vine wafting above the rest of the field. And I went over and I asked you about that. I said, do you mind if I pull that? And I went over to look at it, and there's a patch of maybe, I didn't measure it, 10-15 feet in diameter. That's largely bittersweet. And although you can't see the rest of it wafting above the field, it's pretty pronounced. And as I said, I didn't look other places, but we could talk about specifics on the site.
So what I'd like to propose is that maybe we have an agreement for a 1 year.
Mhm.
And then with the understanding that, you know, future management would be part of the NOI.
I think that sounds great. Would you like to draft the MOU, or would you like me to draft it for you to react to?
You can go ahead and draft it, and then if you can give us a draft, and then we can review it at our next meeting or in the next couple
Yeah.
meetings.
Okay, so, you know, in my mind, it'd be great to get it mowed by the end of August if your meeting schedule allows that.
Oh,
Or-
you
and it-
want to The interior part you want, the outside of the buffer zone, you,
Yes.
outside
The
of,
interior part would not be mowed until November, sometime in November.
so I don't know if we could get this all taken care of by our next meeting.
Well, yeah, maybe not, but if maybe Robin or someone on behalf of the Conservation Commission could come out and stake the site once we come to an agreement, that would be great. It'll
Yeah,
take a little while.
we could have a couple of us come.
Yeah, as many as the more the merrier.
Sure. Well, why don't, I know the next week or two are going to be hectic with my travel plans and maybe other
Yeah.
people. So, let's try to set up a time to meet, and do this, not this coming week, but the week after.
To mark the site or to come up with the agreement?
To mark the site, and if we can mark it, and then perhaps we could review the agreement at our next meeting, which is
Okay.
whatever that is, August 24th. So
That'd be
not,
great. I'm gone much of this month as well. I'm gone from the 22nd through the 28th.
But I can be at the next meeting, Penny.
Yeah, okay, that'd be great.
all right, sounds good. So we got a plan.
Okay, do you
Thank
want
you.
to talk about the restoration memo that April sent as well?
You know, I don't know if we want to review that tonight. I'll ask the commission. Do you guys want to review it tonight if you had a chance to review it, or do you want some more time to read through it?
Yeah, I didn't look at it.
Okay,
I haven't had a chance either.
so I think we'll table that for the next meeting, but we will acknowledge that you gave it to us in a timely way and met that condition. So we thank you for that.
Mhm.
And we'll review it. I don't think there's any other action we need to take right now, except,
Okay, I just wondered if you might have had questions, as I was on the site that day, so.
yeah, I would just say I had hoped that there would be a little bit more detail describing the debris that was removed. There was a sentence about cigarette cartons, and there was a photograph that showed things that were not cigarette cartons. And I just had wished there had been a little bit more characterization of what material was found.
Well, I can tell you what was there. It's the same household trash and you know, the kind of stuff you find on old farms. There were a few pieces from an old car, like there was part of a seat. A lot of small bits of plastic, little bits of glass, some old cans, some old jars, you know, it was nothing. It was like someone dumped a bag of trash back there. And we took all of the easy to get stuff. I think if you muck around, you can continue to find stuff for a while, but considering that the highway department, you know, back a while ago took lots out, what we're getting now are the hard to get little scraps that still remain.
All right, well, I think we'll table that for another meeting.
Okay, great.
But-
Well, thanks for putting us early. I appreciate it.
Okay, so the next topic, there's a few different parts to it, but I wanted to have a follow-up discussion regarding the meeting that we had with the select board last night, as well as do some planning. Do anyone have any comments they want to make about the meeting and where that leaves us?
I think it was a positive about the funding. That seemed to go through quickly in the beginning, and that was great. I guess I felt like that discussion about, do we do the bylaw first or the regulations? It's just, I'm done with that conversation. I think it's just sort of annoying that it just keeps coming up, you know? And I guess I feel like there was some conclusion to it last night. In the end, I would have been flexible and done the 2-hour meeting just to be in agreement with them, just so that we can move on. You know, because now I feel like at the end of the meeting last night, Rita was like, well, we couldn't come to a consensus, so guess what? We're gonna have another meeting. Like, I don't feel like we need to keep meeting about this kind of stuff. We just really need to move on with the regulations and get them done and then move on and do the bylaw, you know? And I
Yes.
think I felt like I tried to make that point, and you know, they have their side to it and we have ours, so that's the rub. And I don't know, I guess I was a little bit disappointed that by the end, it still really wasn't, there was no conclusion at the end of the meeting, but
So I
Um,
think, I agree, with most of that. But I think we should just, I'm ready to move on too. I think we should, once we get the funding for the lawyer, have her review the regulations. And once we have that we go ahead and have a public meeting. I'm still not convinced that it would be of any benefit to have us, the select board, the public, who couldn't make comments, two lawyers at $700 an hour. I just don't see the benefit to it. I think the lawyers could review the draft after, we have Beth look at it and come to the same conclusion as opposed to sitting in a meeting and just going on and on like we did last night. So that, my take is we should just keep moving with the regulations and get it done and then move on to the bylaws.
yeah,
So-
no, I agree. I don't think the lawyers need to sit at a meeting either, you know? I think that was a good suggestion, and to go with that, like, both the lawyers review the documents outside of a meeting and provide comments.
And
I think that's
Yeah, I
fine.
think because the point is not to create theater just for the sake of theater, while I'm sure it would be a wonderful and entertaining demonstration of legal skills to have two lawyers debating for 2 hours at the town's expense. I think we could all watch Law and Order for free.
And I'm not sure there's a benefit to that, because I did spend a lot of time going back over McGregor and McGregor's actual review as well as the other ones to look at. And we've already incorporated most of the comments that he had into the regulations. So, I mean, I think once Beth does it, because he does say it should have a legal review. Once Beth does it, then I think we send it back out again and see if we even met what he thinks we should be meeting with the regulations and go from there.
Agree.
Mhm.
What I feel is important is that, as with other public hearings, and we've had this experience with many other situations, there's a purpose to the public hearing, and it's important for us to kind of keep the focus on that purpose. And that's one of the reasons why, for example, we put a time limit on public comments at public hearings, because we don't want one person to take up 45 minutes of time to the detriment of other people who want to make comments. And similarly, we want to encourage people in public hearings to stay focused on the topic at hand, which is the regulations. And if we're going to have a public hearing about the regulations, it should be about this draft and what's in it and what it means and what questions people have. What comments or feedback or revisions people would like to recommend, but not about the bigger question about what is a bylaw, why do we need a bylaw? I feel like that is a different public hearing. That's very important to have. I'm not in any way saying that isn't important. I'm just saying we can't do all things in one meeting or two meetings, and we need to kind of have a focus.
And I do think I'd rather spend my time at two public meetings, hearing what people have to say and explaining to them so they understand what exactly it is than, go round and round on the same issues,
Right.
which is to no benefit.
Right. I agree. I mean, I'm happy to hear what the legal arguments are. I just felt like there needed to, when I was proposing a shorter time period for it, both one, because it would be more cost effective, and two, I feel like if we can't make these points known in an hour of discussion with maybe even some written comments provided in advance, then it's probably a bigger philosophical debate than we're going to be able to resolve for the purposes of these regulations, right? We can't address all possible issues. Why do we have a conservation commission? Why are there bylaws? I think that some of that is beyond the scope of what we're trying to do with these regulations.
Mhm.
Though,
So-
also want to educate the public as we're doing it, because this is an opportunity. People are interested, people are engaged. And I feel like this is a moment where we have an opportunity to educate people about what we do and why we do it. I think that is important. So what I would like to suggest is this process. One, that we get the legal review from Beth Goodman. And we have a meeting, not a public hearing, but a public meeting where we get to talk with her, that we get to have a discussion and review her comments. And in that meeting, I'm suggesting, and the public can watch, but I would not be recommending that we entertain comments at that point, except for from our consultants, because I think that we want to be time efficient and we want to see if there's any revisions that we need to make. And then if we have to make revisions, we put that draft out with those revisions, and then we advertise for a public hearing based on that new revised draft. I don't want to have a public hearing with a draft that may be flawed that we're going to change. I'd rather get our best and final effort after getting a legal review and then have a public hearing based on that. Then what do we do? If we're making more changes, then we're gonna have another, it gets very confusing to the public. Which draft are we talking about? What are we proposing voting on? So I think that that's a better, cleaner process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think that's great. I think
Yeah,
that's
I'd
great.
like
So
to-
that's the regulations, but now I'm wondering, like, what is this discussion that we're still having with the select board
I don't know.
about
I don't
other
know.
things?
I don't know. But
don't
I
know.
let's just talk about the regulations right now, because
Okay.
that's kind of like the thing we need to talk about. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, and I think that's not bad. I'm not convinced. I think when Beth does it, since she's already made some comments, I don't think she's gonna have that many big things to change. So I think let's see what she comes back with and then decide what we're gonna do to move
Right.
forward.
And, if she says, what, this bylaw is reasonably defensible, these regulations make the administration of this bylaw stronger and more defensible, then I think that that will be helpful to us in understanding a path forward. If she has something different to say, we'll have to listen to that and see where that takes us. I don't want to prejudge the process because I don't know what she's going to say. And then what I would like to propose is that we schedule a public hearing, probably in September at this point, and we can put it out on Town Announce. If the select board would like to come, we invite the select board. We can make time for them to, have their counsel there. If we're going to do this kind of dialogue between two attorneys, then we would have to figure out how we're going to pay for having Beth Goodman there, because the 5 hours that is being offered or proposed by the town would not cover this. Right? The 5 hours of legal review time is for her to do the review and to meet with us for one meeting to have this discussion about her findings, but not to be at any future meetings or further meetings. So if we feel that we need her for more meetings or we need her for public hearings, we're going to have to figure out what the funding mechanism is for that. Because I don't think that's clear. And my recommendation would be that at one of these or both of these meetings, that we also make sure that we schedule it at a time that Janice can be present, because Janice helped draft these regulations. She's one of our consultants. And I think that if there's any technical questions that Beth may have, it would be really important for Janice to be there. We could discuss whether we want to also bring Patrick in or not. it's going to cost us money to bring Patrick in. So I think we should be judicious about it. And if we feel that we want Patrick there for a public hearing, then I'm kind of inclined to think that might be the best place if we're going to bring him to pay for his time. Because at this point, our contract with him is, you know, we've kind of expended our budget for him. We do have a small pot of money available to us from bylaw fees. We have about $3,000 that is available to us that we can use for consultants. We can use it for consultants. We can't use it for a lawyer unless we have approval from the select board. But we can use it for consultants. And so I don't want to spend all that money because who knows what we might need it for. But if we needed to bring Patrick in for a couple of hours for a public hearing, we could easily, I think, use those funds for that.
I think we still need to see what Beth says first. I don't
Yeah.
think, I think the feedback was they want to hear from us, not hear from Patrick again. So anyways, that's just, let's see what Beth
Who
says.
wanted to hear from us?
The public,
I think the public comments were more towards, they wanted to hear us explain things rather than listen to Patrick's reasons for why we did stuff.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
again, it all depends on, you know, what Beth comes back with. If she comes back with some big thing that we need to, then that's a different story. So.
And I think we should talk about the structure for the public hearing because, you know, I've heard, you know, to be responsive to what people have said, there have been some, you know, last time at the public hearing, I did an abbreviated kind of 20-minute presentation. There was a PowerPoint. I could do a more extended presentation. But that takes up time and it takes time away from discussion. So those recordings are on Zoom and people can watch them. And we have the PowerPoint on our website, as well as a bunch of informational sheets. I did a side-by-side comparison between the old regulations and the new regulations, as well as frequently asked questions with, I revised the frequently asked questions and to try to illustrate what the new regulations might mean. I took a couple of examples of types of projects and then tried to explain how we might apply these regulations for those types of projects. Because I thought that an example might be a little bit more informative than just talking in the abstract. Anyway.
I think what might be helpful if we put out, I was gonna say an agenda, but what I mean is just if we put out before the meeting that here's the 5 topics that we're going to discuss. So right now we're going to talk about whatever this is, and then whatever's that we got that we think people still have questions about, and then take comments on those a little at a time, and then leave open time for other things too.
Well, what do you think would be the topics that we might want to focus on?
Yeah, I'd like to go back and just read some of the summaries to decide that, but since we have time to do it, to go back and look at it.
I mean, we could talk about what a performance standard is. We could talk about aura and tree removal protections. We could talk about stormwater. You know, those we could talk about what is an alternatives analysis, because that's something that it might be new to people. And
Yeah, I think even just the simple things like, you know, what's an exception and how do we decide? You know, I think the detail stuff, I mean, again, I don't think they're looking to be too technical. I think they're looking for, how does this affect me?
Okay.
And
We
pick
could
out those
actually,
things
another
that
way
say,
to do it is just go down to different permit types. And you know, kind of what the review process is for different permit types.
I think that's a good idea. I think maybe you do an example for each kind of level, you know, you provide an example of an application that would be the small application, you know, where they almost don't have to apply at all, or you know, that's just the lower than the RDA. Then you do an example of what kind of project would require an RDA, just as one short little kind of presentation to start the meeting off, maybe, you know, these are just some examples. And then I think I agree with Mary, like if there's some topics that we've seen a lot of comments on, and maybe it is like tree removals or driveways or small additions to houses, like something that is a common thing that maybe we've seen comments on, maybe that's something we also, before we take public comment, we talk a little bit about how that type of project would
Okay.
go through the process.
Yeah, no, I'd like all of this, and what I'd like to suggest is that, you know, I can put together a PowerPoint for this. I'd like to not duplicate what's already been done with the previous PowerPoints. So I think I would make this a separate one and say to people, if you want to see the first PowerPoint, go back to that recording or read the document, the PDF of the PowerPoint slides or something, because I just would not want to be repetitious.
Yeah. And
It
then I
might
think
just be like, let's highlight, I mean, what the benefits are, you know. What the exceptions are, the couple of things that, here are the things that are really beneficial in the new bylaw. And let people know what exceptions are and know what some of the different things are.
Okay.
And then we should, I think, be ready with kind of a version of the, we should have it up on the screen. So when somebody, comes up with a very specific question about a specific section, we just go right to that section on the screen and look at it and answer their question.
I
think that's
also feel
important.
like, we'll be prepared, but we should also be comfortable saying, we need to think about that and we'll get back to you with a written response, or we'll discuss it in the next meeting or whatever. So if there's something that we haven't thought about or something that maybe would take a lot of time to explain, we may want to also have that as an option.
Well, we can also put
Yeah.
out when we advertise for the meeting, that it would be beneficial for them to send questions ahead of time.
Mhm.
So that, what are the questions you really want us to answer? And we can do some of that too. It'll help us focus on what people are asking about.
That would be helpful. That would be helpful. We've gotten a lot of emails, and I have to say, a lot of them have almost identical language, which is curious. But a lot of emails saying, I'm just very worried about these regulations because what they mean, because they're going to apply to everybody in town. And what do they mean? It's very worry. I'm afraid of these things. I feel like, there's something bad happening here. And we certainly want to reassure people that that is not our intention to do anything bad. And that, we want to be very transparent and honest and straightforward about answering questions, but it's hard to know where to unpack that anxiety because it's so diffuse and unfocused. It's not focused on a particular issue. It's just
Yeah,
so.
but if we ask for questions, it might help focus that.
Yes, I think that'd be great. So I can do that in the town announce that we send once we get
Mhm.
it. So, I will, when we have the public hearing, it'll probably need to be on a Wednesday so that Janice can come. And I don't know, I don't want to set a date until I know the time frame from getting a review from Beth. I mean,
Mhm.
if everything goes fine, I think she's away next week, so I'm not expecting anything's going to happen next week. And then we meet the following week. So realistically, I don't think we're going to get the review back until our first meeting in September. Is what I think is going to happen. And
That's fine.
okay.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right, so I was asked by the select board to produce a scope for them to have tied to any agreement to hire Beth. So I did put together a scope, and then I sent it to Beth Goodman, and she sent me an engagement letter based on it. So I sent this to you guys later today. And I'd like to make sure we review it tonight and approve it if that's possible. So wondering, do I need to put it on screen share, or have you guys all looked at it?
Yeah, I looked at it. I thought it looked good.
Yep, I think it looks fine.
Yeah.
So I didn't break it down hour by hour, but I have the general topics and the purpose of her engagement and the terms that I think the select board would want in it. And that her engagement letter just basically says, I am being hired for this particular scope, and she references the scope rather than repeating the whole thing.
I think it answers all their questions, so I think it looks good.
Thank you. Great.
I agree.
Okay. All right, does somebody want to make a motion to approve the scope and authorize me to send the scope and the engagement letter to the select board? And
I'll
I
make a motion.
and also to sign the engagement letter. I would sign it.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay,
that we approve the scope and send out the information to the select board, because they're supposed to review it at their meeting next week.
okay. Second,
Second,
hey, David,
I,
Font, I, Harrington.
I,
aye.
Okay, one thing I did want to point out for the commission, because it was discussed last night, how much had been spent on Beth Goodman, and the number that was mentioned was not correct, at least by my records.
Hmm. So are you gonna ask for the invoices from the select board to figure it out?
Well, I have the invoices because they came to me and then I sent them. So I look, unless I'm missing an invoice, I came up with about $6,300, not 9,000.
Wow, that's a lot less, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, unless there's something I totally missed, but I think hold on, there's Carrie. Yes, Carrie.
The only other thing I could think of is possibly they could have also included the amount spent for Lot 032 review. That's the only other thing I could think of that they possibly could have added in.
I
It
think
could
they
be,
were, I
or
think they
else.
were misquoting her dollar an hour figure too.
Hmm. Well, one of her invoices kind of slipped through the cracks and didn't get processed. So the later invoice had carried over the unpaid balance. And so it may be that got counted twice, that balance got counted twice in somebody's calculation, but hopefully they won't overpay. But
Right,
we'll deal with that when that comes about. So one of the things that's unresolved is this donation account offer. And my understanding, and correct me if I don't get this straight, but my understanding is the point that the select board was making was that if they establish this gift account, the disbursements from the gift account have to be approved by the select board, which we already knew, because even if it wasn't a gift account, they have to sign the payment warrants. So obviously they're authorizing any payments. And they have to approve the use of counsel. So even if there was money available, they would have to approve that use of counsel. So let's say theoretically that, we use these 5 hours for Beth Goodman, and then there's some purpose for which we want her to do some additional legal work for us under the bylaw, and we want to use this gift account. Even though they've accepted the gift, they still have to approve the purpose. So, for example, maybe they would say, we don't think that's a legitimate purpose, or you want 2 hours, but we're only going to authorize 1 hour, even though the account was for our benefit or use, they would still be making the decisions about how the account gets used, is my understanding. But that they can't use it for anything else. They couldn't say, oh, we're just going to use this to pay for highway department expenses or something. They can't do that. It can only be used for the thing that it was given for. And if money was left over in that account, there are some methods for refunding the money back to the donor. It's a little complicated to do that, but it is possible. What I was going to suggest is that perhaps if this donor is willing to maybe redefine the terms of his gift, if it could be framed a little bit more generally or broadly for legal expenses and maybe consultant expenses related to the bylaw regulations and the bylaw administration, that would give us a little bit more flexibility. So for example, let's say we wanted to pay Patrick Garner for some consultation work around the bylaw, we could use the fund for that, or some other purpose related to the bylaw, just like we have a fee account that's only bylaw related. I don't know. It was a thought.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like he has to make some edits to it anyway. The select board wanted some changes, so yeah, I think that that's good, making it broader, but at the same time, making it so it answers what they were talking about last night, sort of that it says what it needs to say.
Right. Right. So they, that's kind of in their court because they were going to give us some language. So
Right.
I'm waiting for that. And I have not spoken to the donor. And I don't know how much he wants to donate either. That hasn't been communicated. So maybe we'll try to get a feel for that. What that would look like and be able to report on it at our next meeting. Okay, sounds good.
That's fine.
So there is a revised draft of the regulations that I have circulated to the commission. I don't think I've put it back up on the website yet. I will do so if I haven't already. And what I would like you to look at is it's shorter. I went through it pretty thoroughly and looked for redundant language. And I took out a lot of redundant language. The reason why there was a redundant language, and it wasn't that I missed it, it was that Janice and I had this big, long discussion about maybe we should repeat things in different places in case people didn't see it in the other place in the regulations, but it did make it redundant. So I found, for example, there were several places where we talked about stormwater stuff. I consolidated it all in one paragraph, one section for stormwater management. And I shortened it considerably. I shortened that section. I made it much less detailed, much less confusing, more aligning it with the state stormwater standards, and then in a few provisions that are not in the state stormwater standards that we would want to hang on to, I think, that are helpful, like using the NOAA Atlas 14 precipitation data, for example, good example, which is leads to more accurate stormwater design than the 1962 old data that DEP is still clunking around with. So you can look at it. It's about not including the table of contents, it's about 60 pages long. And I think that it's about as concise as it can be without really starting to take out substantive content.
Mhm.
The only thing I could do to make it shorter would be to take out preambles, but I feel like the preambles are really important. And I hate to shorten them.
Mhm.
That's fine.
Yeah.
The
We'll take a
preambles are educational pieces, but they're also language that we can lift out of this section, those sections, and put in our findings, so that if we're talking about, a stream, we can take some of that language that we think is relevant and put it in the findings of our report, our permits. So having the preamble language is not just filler, it is important.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the preambles. I mean, I'll take a look at the newest version and see. Because I mean, I like having the preambles. Maybe there's some that we can shorten a little bit. I don't know. I'll take a look at them, but I do like to have some kind of preamble for each
Yes.
resource area, because it really describes, they're each different, they
Different.
each have. So,
Yeah, I agree. So one of the comments that somebody had made was, could you make the preambles pop more? Sort of visually pop in some ways so that it would orient people to it. And we could talk about formatting if there's some different version of formatting that the commission would like to see. When I did this, I was having just a real devil of a time with my indents and getting them all to be consistent. And then it was recommended to me to go to the system that I pivoted to, which is not having each subsection indented. It's just got a decimal system. So it's 1 and then 1.1 and then 1.1.1, but it isn't visually easy to see. But it is easy because there's no formatting, there's no indenting to deal with. If we indent, it will lengthen the document. We're gonna have a lot of empty white space in the margins and the document becomes longer, but maybe more readable. I'm happy to change that. I just, for the purposes of the draft, wanted to not deal with the indents because it was just breaking me.
It's killing you. Yeah.
It's killing me. So, but you know, if you guys think that it would be more visually useful, I mean, I can put things in boldface, or I could have the preambles like in a italics or something to make them look a little different. We could do it different ways.
Okay. I'll take a look. I mean, I think that was when we first started doing this, I was sort of, because the ones that I've seen other towns, you know, have bulleted areas and things, but you're right, it would make it longer. But it might be more just visually easier for people
Yeah.
to read, but I mean, I don't know, we can take a look at it and think
Yeah.
about it a little bit.
You know, if you look at 310 CMR 10.00, which are the WPA regs, they're 250 pages long, and you know, there's lots of blank spaces in them, you know, and there's even blank pages, or there's like some pages that have 2 lines on them and then there's nothing. It's
Yes.
it is what
There's pages that say left intentionally blank. I love that. Left intentionally blank.
so there. Yeah, so I'm happy to try to play around with indenting once we get the draft, the content to the point where we're happy with the content. 'Cause that's just you know, that's just the visuals. And
Sounds good.
that's it. Okay, I think we're good. All right, let's move on to minutes. And unfortunately, I did not finish reviewing all the draft minutes that Carrie had sent out, but I do think I sent to you the minutes for June 8th and July 7th.
Yeah.
Carrie?
Sorry, just real quick, there was another section for public hearing planning. I stepped out to use the restroom at one point. Did I miss that part? Was there a date set at all?
No.
Just wanted to make sure.
Okay, so has everybody reviewed the minutes for June 8th?
Yeah, they look good to me.
Okay,
Me
Wonderful.
too.
all right.
Motion to approve.
Okay, second.
Second,
Okay, David,
Aye.
Font, I, Harrington, Wilson.
aye.
Oh, yeah, but that was very mindful. Yeah. And then we've got July 7th, and I'm trying to think who was there. I don't think everybody was there. Might have just
No,
been,
I was there. They looked good. The minutes looked good.
I don't think Robin was there.
I was not there.
Okay. All right. Beth, are you good with those?
Yep,
Okay, somebody make a
Motion to approve.
second.
second,
Okay, David,
Aye.
Font, I, Harrington,
Dane,
and
or
Wilson.
whatever, I wasn't there.
aye. Right, abstain.
All right, next thing, just some updates on NOIs that are in or pending. So there was an NOI submitted for 5759 Shore Drive. We had scheduled the public hearing at our last meeting, and there was a miscommunication, and the applicant didn't come, so we couldn't open that public hearing. They are updating the NOI. It was incomplete. And so we are waiting on that. Question about this, maybe Beth, you know, do they have to resubmit at this point? If it was incomplete and we went 21 days after the submittal, we weren't able to open the public hearing?
You mean, so they are sort of resubmitting, aren't they? They're updating it.
Yeah, but did they have to withdraw the, I mean, I think DP will just let them do the update, even though it was incomplete, yeah. So
Yeah,
they
no,
can just
that's,
enter the existing file number.
yeah,
Okay, all
yeah.
right, so we do need, I have that on the list of site visits to schedule, but that is pending and we don't have anything at this point.
Yeah.
We have another pending NOI for 64 Lake Drive. This is Evan Jones' home, which is right next to Bob Douglas's and 2 doors down. It's right in that area of Lake Drive where that drain is, if you remember. 66 Lake Drive is where the drain is. So this is a fairly large house addition on the lake side of the house, so closer to the lake. And I haven't got the NOI yet, but I did have the building plans. So we can wait and schedule the site visit for after the NOI is submitted, which probably makes sense. And so that's that.
So what did he submit already? Because he submitted plans, didn't he?
He applied for a building permit.
Okay.
And so I have the building permit plans, which I forwarded to you guys, but I don't have an NOI.
Okay.
And he said it was going to be coming soon, so I don't know what that means. All right, couple of other updates. There was a meeting with FERCog this week. And a number of conservation commissions were present to discuss that shared conservation agent feasibility study that was done last year, and to talk about next steps. It was a very interesting discussion. It was maybe about a dozen conservation commissions were represented.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, what was helpful was hearing from other conservation commissions what they were looking for a conservation agent, what were the areas where they felt like they needed support. And it was just really interesting hearing the wide divergence of, you know, kind of situations, ecosystems for different conservation commissions. Like there was the conservation commission from Hawley that said, you know, maybe they get one permit application a year. And they go months without anything going on. And then all of a sudden there's a flurry of activity. I'm like, wow, not a lot going on in Hawley. I told them that we had 14 RDAs last year and there were some people whose jaws dropped. So it is what it is, right? Different communities have different characteristics and different needs. But, you know, I felt like there were some folks, some commissions that had maybe less expertise or less experience than our commission, and had very, very new commissioners, and were really like needing someone to kind of teach them how to do the permitting stuff. And I don't think that's where we're at. And there were some commissions that don't have a land use clerk. They don't have any kind of administrative support. So we're in a better place because we have Carrie. And so like, you know, Carrie's filling a lot of those needs for the paper pushing and filing and going and mailing things and tracking some of the accounting stuff. So in some ways we're well served, I think, having a land use clerk in ways that other towns aren't. One of the things that they talked about was the idea of how to and I said this, and some other commission said it, is that, you know, sometimes we get a complex situation where we would really like some expertise or someone to go to get more information And, the resources are hard to find because you can go to MACC, but they don't always get back to you. And it's sometimes not all that helpful to me. When I have done that, I felt like sometimes it's been a little limited in what they were able to offer. You can hire a consultant, but that costs money. So they were talking about the idea of how they might, pool resources as a county. And maybe be a support across commissions. And so there were a couple of things that I suggested. One was that perhaps we should set up quarterly forums for countywide commissions to get together and share experiences and educational materials and, best practices. So that was thought number one. And then thought number two was perhaps setting up a listserv so that people could ask a question. And if there was somebody on the listserv who had experience in that particular area, they could field it.
Yeah, those are great. Good ideas.
The other thing was that Scott Jackson, do you guys know who Scott Jackson is?
Oh, yeah.
So,
I
yes,
don't.
because you work with them, right? So, somebody want to explain who Scott Jackson is?
He's a UMass professor who's been, very involved in wetland stuff. He was the one that wrote or was the main instigator and writer of the stream crossing standards, the Massachusetts stream crossing standards. If you go to a MACC conference, he's often there, running one of the classes, and he's just very involved in wetland stuff. Has
Right.
been
I was at
for-
UMass for 10 years when we moved here, and I was in his department and got to know him.
Yeah. Well, he's the chair of the Whately Conservation Commission also, and he's on the board of MACC. And he said that he's willing to also be a resource, which I thought was great. So I like the idea of the forums, and I want to I think that it would be nice to have more connections with our neighbors who are doing the same work that we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, regional, there are other, across the state, there's other regional organizations like that. And the forums would be a place you could go to with all your questions, and you could hear from other commissions how they handle things.
Right.
Yep. I think that's great.
So anyway, there was also a discussion of like, well, what would be next steps around having a shared conservation agent? And there was a suggestion that perhaps Wendell and Leverett and Shutesbury might want to revisit whether we want to do that, because we're all very similar communities and we're geographically closer. It's Franklin County is really a big county, and it's pretty impractical to think about having a conservation agent that's going to service Hawley and go to Hawley and then come to Leverett or Shutesbury. So the idea of focusing on this, our neighborhood makes sense to me. Still not sure about the feasibility and, how this could be structured. FERCog shared their perspective that they could create a shared conservation position, but it's expensive to do it through them, and it may be more economical to not do it through FERCog because of their structure and the way they do positions. There ends up being kind of an added expense to it for benefits and all that stuff. So the other option that was talked about, rather than really having a conservation agent, would be to perhaps find a consultant and have a contract with a consultant for a certain number of consultation hours. And each town would buy, maybe have it pooled between 3 towns, and then, kind of like somebody like an Emily Stockman or someone like that, where, you would sort of purchase a block of consultation hours per year or something. So you're not hiring an employee per se, but having a consultant that you could go to when we have tricky things or complex cases.
Mhm. Sounds good. Probably be cheaper than a lawyer.
Yes,
Right?
definitely.
Yeah,
Yes, definitely cheaper than a lawyer.
yeah.
But I would love that if there was some option like that. And that could dovetail nicely with our structure since we already have a land use clerk. This wouldn't be replacing Carrie. We're not replacing you. This might be something that would be in addition to, perhaps in the future. Nothing's going to be happening soon, so. Anyway, okay. So, on that topic, we got forwarded a email from DP that they were offering a discounted subscription to the, I think it's called the DP Recorder. Maybe I'm not getting the name of it right. Anyway, the periodical that DEP puts on, and it's a database for doing research. And it was about $275, I think. And I'd like to suggest that we get that subscription for this year.
Sure. Sounds good. At least give it a try. You know, if we end up not using it too much, then next year we don't do
Yeah.
it. But yeah, that sounds good.
Make a motion to spend the money on a subscription for this year.
Okay, second.
My second,
Okay, David,
Aye.
I, Harrington,
I,
and Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, so moving on, the Locks Pond Culvert Replacement Project. Unbeknownst to me, there was a posted meeting on Tuesday evening that the Conservation Commission was invited to for a joint meeting with the Select Board and the FinCom and LWAC. And I didn't learn about it until mid-afternoon on Tuesday. So I did go, and Mary was there. Mary, would you like to share with the others how that meeting went?
Yeah, it was an interesting meeting that had a lot of proposals. What would the different proposals be to continue work, to go as they are, to design a new pipe, you know, to wait till next year, and what the cost of all those things were being. Lots of discussion around all of these issues. And basically they tabled it and we're supposed to decide yesterday, but I haven't heard about any decision about moving forward. So the select board was kind of split on, one wants, let's move forward, one wants to design the pipe, you know, and one wasn't sure. So they were still weighing the pros and cons of what they should do and worrying about basically what the rain's going to be over the next few months and could they really do it. But a lot of uncertainty around, you know, you could wait till next year, but who knows, next year might be worse than this year. But no decision was made.
So
Yeah.
the issues that would be relevant for us is that they may be wanting to apply for a permit extension because the permit expires in November. And they may want to apply for an amended order of conditions in order to remove the time of year restrictions. So none of that has been decided, and I guess we'll find out when we find out. I think questions that I think we will need to think about is, you know, what kind of time of year restrictions make sense? For example, would we allow them to do the construction and the dewatering in the spring during a high water period? Or would we want to broaden the time of year permission to, you know, in a wider window, but have some limitations? And I think we need to think about
And
that.
just right now, the end of September is the date for their in-water work, which is really, if they keep delaying, they would have to
Right.
submit to extend that.
So, you know, they may want to resume the work and then push past the September 30th date, in which case they would be asking, you know, to be working into October perhaps, or November. And that's one question. But if they say, oh, we're going to delay the project for another year, we're not going to do it this fall, which is one of the options they were discussing, then what time of year requirements would we have? For example, if they said they wanted to do it April 1st, would we allow that? Or would we say, no, you have to do it during a period of lower flow, which is typically after July 1st? So those are things to think about. I don't think we have to make our minds up about anything, but I think those are questions we wouldn't be faced with. It's not really just, are you going to have time of year restrictions or not? It's really, what are the best time of year restrictions? We don't want to be restrictive unnecessarily, so we need a rationale for anything that we're going to require. One of the questions I would like the commission to think about, and we don't have to make a decision right now, but we do have authority because this is an open permit. And if the town does ask us to change something, it gives us this opportunity to bring in a consultant. If they're going to redesign the dewatering system, and we have to review a new engineering plan, or if we have to change the time of year restrictions or any of that, would we want to bring in a consultant? I've done some calling around, and my best recommendation, if we were going to hire a consultant, would be to hire Pat Garner for this. He has a lot of experience working on culvert projects.
I don't feel like if we're just changing the time of year, I don't really think we would need a third-party consultant for that. You know, I think it's pretty easy for us to figure out. My opinion would be the spring, the flow is going to be just as high as it is right now. Like, the spring is really not a time to go in and do a big project like that. But I guess I would want to wait and see what they propose in terms of changing their dewatering system. If it's, you know, a real significant engineering change, then I guess maybe we would want someone to review it.
What they're
I don't know. To
proposing
me, it
is
doesn't seem
just to make the pipes bigger at this stage.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's like I guess a large enough engineering setup that we would really need a third-party review to do. If it was the entire culvert project, then yeah, you know, we would be wanting a third-party review. But if
Okay.
it's really just the dewatering system, I kind of think it wouldn't be too complicated. We would be all right.
Okay, well, let's see, we'll wait and see what that looks like. I have a question for the commission. And again, we don't have to decide this tonight. It's just some issues to think about. But the winter drawdown permit, as we know, the expiration date for it has been extended because of the pandemic. And so it's not due to expire this October the way we originally thought. It's actually going to expire in 2025. We also understand that the memorandum of understanding that was used for the last couple of years is not part of the order of conditions, and so it's not binding. And I don't think it's you know, I don't think it informs what is going on or what needs to go on. From what I've been able to understand from doing some research and talking to DEP, the standard around minimum flow from the dam is based on the DFW, Division of Fish and Wildlife's performance standards. And also the US Fish and Wildlife have a New England aquatic base flow policy, where they define what the minimum flow calculations are supposed to be for dams in order to protect stream health. And that flow is based on the size of the watershed and the time of year. It's not based on the current practice that they're using at Lake Wyola. The current practice is that they're basing the flow on what they believe is the inflow to the lake. So they're adjusting the outflow to be 50% of the inflow. And that is not what the performance standards call for. And the permit for the drawdown, the winter drawdown, references the performance standards, the DFW performance standards. So what they're doing is inconsistent with the current notice of intent, the current permit. It's a different, they're using a different methodology. And it's a methodology that works fine if we have a lot of water. It doesn't work the same way if we have a drought. So if we have a lot of water, it doesn't matter a whole lot because you're already making that minimum flow. But if you're in a drought conditions, it could result in less water being released than the aquatic base flow policy would require. And the permit is based on the aquatic base flow policy. It's referenced in the document, in the NOI. So I think this is something that we need to resolve. I've had a couple conversations with some members of the Leverett Conservation Commission, and they're interested in being a part of this discussion because they're stakeholders, because the Sawmill River is in their territory primarily, and it depends on the minimum flow coming from the dam. And so I'd like to invite them to come to a discussion at some point about this, if we're going to have a discussion with the town.
So the town has sent out their RFP for proposals to hire a firm that's going to address all these issues, address the new permits and everything. I know they had one response. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but they're hiring somebody that's going to look at all of this and
Right.
address all of this.
They're just that. So my guess is it's going to be a few months. And since the permit isn't expiring, there's no urgency right now. We don't have to get this thing permitted by October 18th, which is what we thought we did. So what I would like to suggest as a workaround is that we have a conversation with the town, not to go back to the memorandum of understanding. I think the MOU is not the right tool for this because it's non-binding. I think one option would be to say to the town, just basically in a letter, our understanding is that the proper process for managing the water from the permit is X, Y, and Z, and this is what we would like to see followed under the existing permit, and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I sort of agree, but I also kind of understand what Mary's saying, that they're moving in the right direction to rewrite it, and these will be the kinds of things that we bring up when we review that notice of intent. We make sure, and I know we don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but also, again, we have a very wet year, so we're not in a drought kind of a situation where there would be more concern, I guess. I don't know. I just feel like coming up with more things to yell at the town about right now is just, I don't know if we should keep doing it. I feel like, I feel like what we need to do is just keep on them to get a good notice of intent in about the drawdown and about management of the dam, and something going forward that we all support and all feel like it was studied well by scientists and by engineers and hydrologists, and that it's really a good plan. And
so when
yeah.
Mary was at a site visit a couple weeks ago, Mary had raised a concern apparently that the water being released from the dam looked insufficient, that there was like almost no water coming out of the dam and through the sluiceway. And then I got an email from Becky saying, well, what would you like us to do? Do you want us to open it up? And, I didn't feel like I could respond to that because I don't have enough information. I need more information, and we need more information in order to make an informed decision about that. It's not just a matter of telling the dam keeper, yeah, open it up more. I have to have a better understanding of what's happening now and what the flow is. And and what are the factors that they're taking into account, which I don't have. So I said that, you know, we were gonna table it and bring it to a meeting, but I'm bringing it to you guys.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, like, I'm usually not a status quo person, but, you know, I do think I would rather push for once they get their person hired, that we be part of the conversations of looking at what everything is that we're gonna do. I mean, to go after making all these changes right now when we're in the middle of the culvert and how that's gonna affect everything,
Okay.
I don't think it's the best use of our time. I think once we find out who the company is, it would be nice to see how they're going to work through all of these issues.
Well, do we wanna ask for a working meeting once they've got their consultants? So maybe we could just kind of lay out some of the things we might be looking for.
Sure, if they're willing to sort of take our input a little bit on their NOI application, which they should, you know, they should kind of come to us and ask what we'd be looking for in the application, right? Yeah, I think that would be really helpful.
So they did get a lot of that to put out the RFP, right? They took a lot of that information to kind of build what they wanted for the companies when they put it out. So some of that is there, but it would be nice that once they come on, for them to sit down and talk about how they're going to approach this and what they're going to do.
Mary, have you heard at LWAC whether they're gonna do a wildlife habitat evaluation?
That was part of it. LWAC is this Saturday too, hopefully I'll get an update from Mark, since he
Yeah.
was working with Becky on putting all of those things together, so.
Well, LWAC is having a meeting this Saturday.
I'm sorry, next Saturday. It's
Okay.
LWA is this Saturday and LWAC's next Saturday.
So, and also there is the LWAC site visit with FERCog.
Well, I was gonna ask, is anybody going to that?
I'm out of town. I believe Scott was going. Are you available? You're not. Yeah.
It's too much walking and stuff for me to be able to do. It's,
Robin?
Yeah, I'm not able to go.
hopefully, if Scott's doing it, he would be the ideal person to be able to walk around and do it.
Yeah.
It sounds like they've invited a ton of people, so how they're gonna accomplish it is gonna be very interesting, but.
All right,
look forward to hearing.
okay. All right, so moving on, site visits. So Mary, you had the Locks Pond Culvert site visit. Do you want to just share a little bit about that meeting last week?
So last week, I went on the site visit with Eric Stocker from the select board and Becky, and the engineer. And the purpose for the engineer was to come and look at the water and do measurements. So he actually did come and, measured the water that was flowing down from the start of where the pipe would be. And one side's slow and one side's fast. And they took multiple measurements. They used dye to test how fast it would get from one point to the next point. They went inside the culvert and measured inside the culvert. And basically came up with, you know, all of the numbers were still on the higher side of their recommendations, like 14 or 16, when they really wanted to be around 5. So at that point in time, it was still, the flow was still a little on the high side. It has come down since then too, and it's still coming down, although it's raining right now, so it kind of goes up and down, but he used that for some of his recommendations. So you know, they designed the pipe to hold up to 18. And I think that day it was still running 14, you know, and the Sawmill River thing was around 12.6. So, you know, looking at them as average, it's pretty much telling you what it was going to do. So hopefully, and at the meeting the other day, I did sit next to Howie, you know, and his opinion is that, you know, what's flowing through there now is more like what usually does, not like the drought from last year. And then it usually does slow down, and sometimes you see it go up a little and down a little. But that's what they're still worried about, is the measurements are still a little on the higher side. But again, as soon as the rain is over, they drop, like the Sawmill River's back down to 9 again. You know, and next week is supposed to be sunny all week in 80s, so, you know, maybe it will drop even more.
Yeah,
But they did do all the measurements, and we measured from the top and went through the gates and got in the middle of the river and did it all, so.
Okay, well, thank you for doing that. All right, so last thing I have on the agenda are site visit scheduling. So I have 4 project addresses that we need to schedule site visits for. 3 of them are at the lake. We've got 64 Lake Drive, which is Evan Jones's NOI that's pending. We've got the 59 Shore Drive, and 88 Shore Drive, which is a building permit application. And then we got a garage addition for 70 Cooleyville Road. And as you may recall, we just did an RDA for a septic system a few months ago for 70 Cooleyville Road. But, you know, it's possible that this, I don't know the distance from the resource area. It's possible that we would need to have, that might end up being an RDA because it's in the buffer zone. But I don't know if it's in the buffer zone. I don't know distances, would have to check them. I asked the landowner to get me a better site map. Because they gave us a very fuzzy, very blurred, depixelated site plan, and I can't tell where the resource area is. Yeah, Carrie.
Yeah, he had called me earlier today about that, just explaining that he was it took him a little bit to contact someone about it, but he has someone working on it now, so should be coming soonish.
Okay. So maybe that needs to hold off until we have the, did he say when he was going to get it for us?
Sorry. No, he just was telling me that it took him a minute, or it took him a little bit to find someone, but he had just now found someone, so he's working out the details of when the person's gonna come and do it and put it together.
So why don't we table that one? And so we have 3 down by the lake. We
So the
could,
59 Shore Drive, are you gonna do a site visit before you get their revised NOI? Or their
well,
revised
that's the
plans?
question is whether we want to we might want to table that as well.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think we need to see, they said they would revise all the suggestions, but I think they should see what they
We're
put
knocking
back
these
in.
off. We're knocking these off. So that brings us down 64 Lake Drive. So we do have the building permit application. I'm absolutely confident this requires a notice of intent. It's,
Yeah,
Looking at the building permit, I do think it would be a notice of intent.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's worth our time to go visit any of the sites until we actually have the applications in front of us, you know?
do we want to go forward and have me tell the applicant for 64 Lake Drive that they need an NOI for this?
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah.
If it's a large enough project and it's that close to the lake, you know, if it's, you know, whatever, you could ask him what's the closest point to the bank. And if it's,
I think it's like 25 feet.
yeah, so to me, that means it would, if it's a large enough addition that it would require an NOI.
Like 500 square feet or something.
Yeah, it's a large bedroom plus a patio plus some other work that they're doing, looking at it. I'm pretty sure that it's a lot of work they're gonna do that it would require an NOI.
I had a
I mean, there's, digging.
So, okay, I'll tell him it's gonna be an NOI, just so he knows. And now we're down to, I love how we're just knocking these off without having to do site visits. 88 Shore Drive is a building permit application that's near you, Mary. It's on the uphill side of Shore Drive, so it's not on the lake shore.
Oh, it's not on the lakeside, but what's he building?
I think a garage maybe.
So
So
he's far enough away from the lake that it doesn't fall within buffer zone.
yeah, come here, unless there's another wetland. Yeah, Carrie.
If I remember correctly, I think he's trying to build 2 separate sheds on the property, and on the he kind of wrote a rough plan of where they're sitting compared to where it is from the lake and his property line. And he wrote down distances. I could see if I could find it and share
Yeah,
it.
from the lake, it's more than 100 feet, but I don't know if there's any other wetlands on the property. That's,
Yeah, I'm not sure if there
It
is, because
usually
he's
do
pretty,
like-
he's pretty hilly. You
I
know,
mean-
he owns most of the property up there, and it's a lot of. He makes maple syrup out of the maple trees up in the back there, so. I'm
so
not sure.
usually we do site visits just because we want to see what they're doing and if they're making any changes to anything that would have an effect on stormwater runoff, for example. That's usually the way we do it.
Yeah, I think it's worth a site visit.
Carrie?
I have the little plan he sent up on screen if you want me to share it.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Can you see it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess I'd want to see, I understand that he's out of the buffer zone for the lake, but I'd want to see if there are any other wetlands in that area up there. So is there a road behind his house?
So what's behind the house? There used to be, there's a decommissioned road that's called Watson Strait.
Oh,
So it doesn't extend all the way down to his place, but it's no longer considered a road, but it is still there.
okay.
Because it's behind my house and all the houses in the area there.
What is your address?
66.
If you're a little ways away. So, can you do this site visit or you can?
Yeah,
stop-
I could do this one because it's way down the end of the street from me, so.
Okay, great. All right, so, then that's a good thing. So why don't we try to do the site visit for this next Wednesday? Would that work for you guys?
I mean, I can do it. Who else can do it with us?
Um,
Are you back then? Are you back?
let me look.
Are you back by then?
am I back?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're back.
I think I'm free, I think.
Okay, what time do you want to do it?
I mean, if Beth wants to come, it's really, if you can come, what time? You know,
Yeah, I can come. My usual 4 o'clock is good.
Okay, let's do
Yeah,
4
that-
o'clock on Wednesday, the 16th. I will email everybody and the landowner. And that's the only site visit we have to do. Yay.
and can you just, Carrie, can you send us all that plan that you just showed?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. I don't think I have anything else.
I have one thing is that the first CPA meeting is on the 24th, which is also our next meeting. The CPA meeting is, I think, at 8 o'clock. So I'm not sure how that's all gonna work out. I don't expect that there'll be very many of these CPA meetings, but it looks like they might be doing Thursday nights, which is the same as the Concom, so that might just come up a few times.
Yeah, I got them to change the dates a few times because it conflicted. Well, the 24th, do you want to find an alternative night to meet? It's my wedding anniversary, so I would be happy to have a Concom meeting on the 24th. Try to schedule a meeting for the 23rd.
Sure, wait, let me just,
I mean, I could do the 23rd if you want to switch the Concom meeting.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
7 PM on the 23rd.
Can we still do 6 PM?
Yes, we can do 6 PM.
I mean, that's fine with me. How's everybody else?
yeah, then no, the 23rd is okay. All right, so Concom meeting 6 PM, we're doing?
Yeah, let's do 6. Robin, how about you?
I'm trying to keep track of this. I have down Wednesday, the 16th.
for a site visit.
Oh, site visit. Okay. Oh, at 4. Yes. I'm sorry. I've got all these notes on here. And then the next Concom meeting on the 23rd. Yes, my calendar's open.
All right, Carrie, can you do the 23rd?
Yes, I
Uh,
can.
At what time?
6 PM.
6.
I like these early times because we end early.
Yeah. Okay, so good. All right, so next meeting will be the 23rd. I'll put it in tonight so we get a Zoom account designated. I don't think there'll be a conflict with anything there. I know that the historical commission wanted to meet, but you guys are more important. Okay,
Thank
all
you.
right. So I think we got it. You guys want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn,
Second.
8:30.
8:30 PM and David, David,
Aye, I said aye.
I for you, I
I said
define,
aye.
all right, Harrington
Hi.
and Wilson. Aye. Okay, great, thank you, everybody. Good night.
Okay, good night.
Good
Carrie.
night.
Night.
Good night, y'all.